Afternoon. I want to call to the order the Medical Board of California. No more music.
Hello.
Wow. That's to call to the order the Medical Board of California.
Is that you?
What's going on?
Good theme music.
You have an intro.
Testing me. Okay.
You're hearing background music. I thought it was maybe you, but I don't think it was. Okay, thank you.
Okay, are we okay now?
Are we okay? Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to hear myself anymore. That was bad enough. So we'll call the meeting of the medical board to the order and roll call, please.
Sorry, I was waiting for you to do your whole speech thing.
Now we'll get there.
Dr. Bolat,
Present.
Judge Feinstein,
Present.
Dr. Hawkins,
Here.
Dr. Kraus,
Here.
Ms. Lawson,
Here.
Dr. Levine, Dr. Lewis,
Present.
Ms. Pines,
Here.
Ms. Sutton Wills,
Here.
Mr. Warmouth,
Here.
Ms. Wright, Dr. Yip, and Dr. Gonadev.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. We got quorum, so let me now go through what Kim wrote here. I want to ask all of to please turn our cell phones to silent. You may notice board members accessing their electronic devices. Laptops went to electronic devices during the meeting. They're using the laptop solely to access the board meeting materials that are in electronic format. This is an official meeting of the Medical Board of California. As such, disruptions to the board's business will not be tolerated. You have a designated time on the agenda for public comment and ask for public comment on each item. I ask that you will be respectful of the need to conduct the board's business. Should anyone disrupt this meeting, I will ask the person to conduct him or herself in such a manner that permits the board to transact its business. This meeting will be available via teleconference. Individuals listening to the meeting will have an opportunity to provide public comment and will be assisted by a moderator who will be facilitating the teleconference process. For those members of the public participating via teleconference, please wait until the moderator has introduced you before you make your comments. To request to make a comment during the public comment period, please press star and 1. You will hear a tone indicating you are in the queue for comment. If you change your mind and do not want to make a comment, please press star and 2. Assistance is available throughout the teleconference meeting. To request a specialist, press star 0. Each person will be limited to 3 minutes and per agenda item. During agenda item 2, public comments on items not on the agenda, the board has limited the public comment period for individuals on the teleconference to 20 minutes. In addition, public comment from individuals here at the meeting will be also limited to 20 minutes. Therefore, after 20 minutes, no further comments will be accepted. During public comment on any other agenda item, 10 minutes will be allowed for comments from individuals on the teleconference line and those in the audience. After 10 minutes, no further comments will be accepted. Business Services Office staff will be assisting me with receiving the public comments via teleconference during this meeting. The board welcomes public comment on any item on the agenda, and it is the board's intent to ask for public comment prior to the board taking action on any agenda item. For some reason, I forgot to ask for public comment on the agenda item, and you wish to speak on that item, please raise your hand or come forward and you will be recognized. I would like to request all speakers complete a presenter slip so I can call on you by name at the appropriate time, and the record of this meeting can be full and complete. However, this is voluntary. Please give the speaker slips to Ms. Cruz Jones. I will do my best to call upon everyone who has supplied a slip for the agenda item and recognize those who wish to make a last-minute comment. We plan to end the meeting today at 5:30 p.m. Kim, can you please introduce the members in the audience?
Yes, I'd like to actually introduce Jessica Sieferman. She's the Executive Officer of the Board of Optometry, and she's going to be speaking tomorrow, but she's here today joining us as well. And one last thing, I would like to ask all of the members, if you're making comments, to please use the microphones. When we were trying to transcribe the last meeting, we had some issues with that. So we'll try to remind you as well, but if you could use the microphone, that's very beneficial to us.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kirschmeyer. Agenda item 2, public comments on items not on the agenda. We have a slip, Kim? I have no slips. Anybody would like to comment? Any comments on the phone?
We do have comments from the phone. The first is from Susan. Your line is open.
6 years ago, a surgeon I was referred to by my doctor for a breast reduction removed my gluteus, infragluteal ligaments, parts of hamstrings, and more without need or consent. He cut me in dozens of muscular zones, stabbed my sciatic knot, knee joints, and bony trochanter. The surgical plan doesn't match what he did. I wasn't a candidate for what he did. I was petite, athletic, at my perfect muscular weight and fitness with some. Yet he removed 6 pounds of needed tissue, destroyed my fascia structure, systemic health, and botched my breasts. In consultation, the surgeon said, minimally invasive, conservative, and my concerns were totally overblown. In deposition, he said he learned power-assisted liposuction, which he used against my knowledge by reading instructions out of the box. He left me excessively bloodied, in intractable pain, and disfigured. I'm on SSI disability with serious physical health problems and hypertrophy due to his careless, unskillful actions. I'm unable to run my businesses, support myself, complete life tasks, have normal relationships, exercise, pursue advanced degrees, buy a home, take care of my elderly mother, travel, or enjoy life. I'm at risk for homelessness and will die young due to this. The surgeon engaged a defense team to slander me and cover his crimes. His paperwork is inept and fabricated, and his photos are deceiving. The TV show surgeon he hired, who lied in court for him, works for your board. I filed a case against both the surgeon and his witness. The case against the surgeon was supposedly investigated yet closed, although there's plenty of evidence of wrongdoing. 10 doctors, including 4 board-certified plastic surgeons, have said this was below the standard of care, shows evidence of negligence, and was surgical battery. There's no way to verify who did your investigation and what their reasons were for taking the side of the surgeon who destroyed my body by going on an egregious sculpting trip against common sense or consent. Your board also refused to investigate the complicit witness who works for you and lied in court and is guilty of moral turpitude. The Medical Board of California has
Please
a
conclude.
statutory required mission to prioritize public safety above any value or goal. Senator Jerry Hill said in an email to me, failure by the Medical Board, California Medical Board, to meet this goal in each case is egregious and legally, ethically, and morally unacceptable. The board's failure in my case,
Ma'am, please conclude.
California. In the interest of public safety, I propose we start a new case or reopen the existing case. Your website leads people into believing the Surgeon Center of the Negligent Surgeon is accredited. It's not and hasn't been since May 2013. Alicia at the HDIC can confirm.
Thank you, though. I think we'll connect you with one of our staff who can help you. We understand your pain.
I'm not sure that you do, actually.
Yes, we do, ma'am. So we will connect you with the appropriate people. Please
How
work
will
with
you
our
do that?
staff.
Because I'm in pain just holding the phone, and so I'm going to have to hang up. So how are we going to connect me?
Can you leave your name with the attendant so we can make sure that our enforcement chief contacts you?
Yes. Who do I leave my name with?
With the attendant that's on the telephone, they will be able to take your information.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll do that. Thank you
Okay,
very
thank
much.
you.
Thank you. Any other comments on the phone?
We do have a comment from Eric. Your line is open.
Hi, everyone. It's funny that you always tell people that you're going to have them talk to Christina Delp from enforcement after they make calls like this, because nothing ever happens when Christina finally calls them. There's been 2 other calls in the past, and you've said you're going to put them through to Christina Delp, and she does absolutely nothing. First, I want to congratulate you all on the sunset extension of the medical board for another 4 years. I'm sure you're going to pat yourselves on the back for accepting the status quo instead of striving to improve the board for the protection of consumers as is directed by state law. In that same vein, I want to go on record and point out that your powers that be, which I assume is Kimberly Kirkmeyer, has once again not put the topic of the Public Records Act on the agenda for the meeting. I asked for it to be put on the agenda for the first time an entire year ago at the October meeting in 2016, and I brought it up at every meeting since, and it's still nowhere to be found. It's egregious that you don't take this topic seriously and continue to allow employees of the medical board to break the law. I also want to point out again that you all work to protect the citizens of this state, not the doctors that the board licenses, and most certainly not anyone on your staff that regularly breaks the law. When you knowingly protect a staff member who breaks the law or a bad doctor, you yourselves become complicit in that crime. When you let a doctor off easy and they go on to harm patients, you are complicit in that crime. Let's just hope that the doctors who sexually offend their patients, like Dr. Hari Reddy, who sexually assaulted 4 of his patients, including a 15-year-old girl, don't end up doing it again. Unfortunately, your current president, Dev Ganadev, was part of the panel that restored the license to this 4-time sex-offending doctor and is now business partners with his brother-in-law, Prem Reddy, after accepting a $40 million donation from his new medical school. Pretty convenient, if you ask me. Lastly, you need to stop pretending that at least some of you are not being swayed by the California Medical Association. Dev likes to assure the public that the board doesn't allow themselves to be swayed, but frankly, Dev, we simply don't believe most of what you say. The CMA's membership is composed of less than 30% of all California's
Please
doctors.
conclude.
If the bulk of our state's doctors refuse to join that club, why in the world would you let them have a say in anything that goes on with the medical board? So any of you who really doesn't want to be a part of breaking the law, I suggest you take the issues I bring to you seriously. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments on the phone?
We do have one more from Dr. Khadijah Lane. Your line is open.
Good afternoon. This is Dr. Khadijah Lang, President, Golden State Medical Association, and I'm just calling in follow-up on the demographic. I'm sorry? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I just want to thank the board. I have spoken with people that have been involved in following up and implementing the bias, unconscious bias training that the board has begun for all members of the board and enforcement process, as we had discussed with the task force as a recommendation for something that could be done in remedying findings in the demographic study. We just want to thank the board for moving so quickly on beginning the problem. So we thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lang. Any other comments on the phone?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Now let's move to the agenda item 3, approval of minutes from July 27, 28 meeting.
Move approval.
Second.
Any comments, any modifications? Any public comments from the audience? Any comments on the phone?
We have a comment from Ann. Your line is open. Ann, your line is open. Please check your mute button.
Hello, this is Dr. Ann Stavron of the Charles R. Drew Medical Society. I'm sorry I had a little trouble with the phone. My comment was only in support of the comment by Dr. Lang regarding the board's training with regards to physicians. We had a training at the meeting for the Ethnic Physicians Organization, and our members are received this training and are in strong support of the board and their actions with regards to the action items in the study that was done. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
No comments from the phone.
Thank you. So the motion was made and seconded. Roll call, please. Ms. Crujo, Lisa?
Dr. Bolat? Judge Feinstein? Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Dr. Kraus?
Aye.
Ms. Lawson? Dr. Levine? Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Pines?
Yes.
Ms. Sutton Wills? Mr. Wormuth?
Yes.
And Dr. Gonadev.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Next one is me, President's report. Well, at least I can tell you that I'm glad the sunset is done. It took months of hard work from my vice president here and my staff, especially Ms. Kirschmeyer and Ms. Simos, to really get to where we are. And I'm so thankful to the staff and so thankful to people, whoever listened, whether that is the Senate, Assembly, Governor's Office, stakeholders. We worked with every one of them, and it was, believe me, the last minute it was done. So that takes a huge load off me. The rest of it again, I can put up with. I just didn't want it sunset on my on my dime. Let me put it that way. So it was important. Ms. Pines and I had calls with the executive staff to discuss the meeting agenda and the other board projects. We constantly communicate. That's our job. Ms. Kirschmeyer and I also provided a presentation last week to the Network of Ethnic Physician Organization Summit on the medical license and state laws. It was a very good meeting, and then this Sunday I presented this same to the American College of Surgeons chapter for the Indian physicians. So we do these things as much as possible to really prevent harm. It's extremely important to remember that preventing is better than just disciplining it afterwards. We're also trying to look at, probably Mr. Warmoth brought it up to me, 5-10-minute presentation to the consumer groups on what board does, how can they easily get to the board and explain what our job is and what we do. So I think we'll get there. In the end, goal is to inform what all we do and make sure that people get the best and safest quality health care. With the loss of Dr. Bishop, I have asked Ms. Lawson to take over the chair of the Application Review and Special Program Committee, and also asked Dr. Hawkins to join the committee. You'll find a new roster under the agenda item 4. If any member wishes to change their committee assignment, please feel free to contact me or Ms. Kirschmeyer. With that, again, I do want to thank all the people involved in to getting this sunset done so that we can carry on for the next 4 years. Any comments on the report from the board members? Okay. Comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
We have one comment from Eric. Your line is open.
Deb, you said you worked with everyone on the Sunset Review. To my knowledge, you didn't work with patient safety advocates. You all barely answer my emails, let alone speak to me with the issues I brought up in regard to the medical board. You only worked with people, apparently, who furthered your goal to keep the board going without making it better. And I can see the smirk on your face. I would appreciate it if you'd be respectful when I speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andrist. Any other comments on the phone?
No comment at this time.
Okay, we'll go to the next item on the agenda, Executive Management Report, Ms. Kirschmeyer. Oh. Board member communications with interested parties. Any board member have any? As I already mentioned, I work with everyone from doctors to the legislature to the AMA. So I just want to continuously declare that by each board meeting. Any others? Okay. Any comments from the audience? Any comments on the phone?
No comments at this time.
Okay, that's That takes us to the agenda item 6, right, Kim? Yeah.
Yes.
Executive management reports, Ms. Kashmir.
I would like to actually start my report today by introducing two new members to the board's executive team. The first is Mary Catherine Cruz Jones, who replaced Lisa Toof as the board's administrative assistant. So most of you have actually already interacted with her, but I'm really glad that she's joined our team and that she's now aboard with us. And then I also want to publicly thank Ms. Toof for her dedication to the board and to the members and the public over the last several years. While we're going to miss her in our executive unit, we're actually very glad that she decided to stay with the board in our licensing program. And she's doing our licensing outreach to the medical schools and to the GME program. So we're really happy that she's continuing in that spot. The other individual I'd like to introduce is our new Deputy Director, Christine Lawley. Ms. Lawley, as all of you know, was previously at the Department of Consumer Affairs as the Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations. So we're so lucky to have her aboard with the board. And then there are a lot of projects that we will be wanting to move forward together, including going paperless in our licensing program and making the board more technologically available. In addition to actually evaluating some of the board's processes to find efficiencies. So I'm really glad that she has joined me, and my husband's very glad that she's joined me as well. So lucky that she's now part of our team. Okay, so as usual, I'm not be going over all of the summaries that you have in your packet unless someone has a question. However, there are a few statistics that I'd like to actually point out. And the first is that our central complaint unit has actually decreased the time to process a complaint from 123 days that was at the end of last fiscal year to 90 days in the month of September. This is really just something to commend the enforcement staff for working hard to reach this goal. I know this has been an issue for them that they've really been striving to meet. And then the other statistic I want to bring to your attention, it's actually not in the packet, but it will be released in the board's annual report that will hopefully come out in November. And that is that the board actually took 466 disciplinary actions last fiscal year. This is actually an increase in 78 actions over the prior year. And so that's a significant increase. And again, we do get more complaints. So you think that there's a volume increase, but it was interesting that we saw it so soon because it hasn't increased that much over the last several years. So just taking more disciplinary actions as well on cases. And that's really thanks to Health Quality Investigation Unit and Ms. Castro's unit at HQE as well. On pages BRD 6A4 is the board's fund condition, including complete repayment of the board's outstanding loans to the general fund. With the loans, the board is expected to be at the mandated level in fiscal year 18-19. Unfortunately, the Department of Consumer Affairs actually has switched over to a new accounting database, and our normal budget reports are not available. So I'm hoping that we'll have something by the January meeting. They've really been struggling with, any transition has been difficult with IT. And so we're working now to get those reports, and hopefully we'll have an update on this year's budget of 17-18 at the next meeting. However, we did include in your packet the closing documents for the last fiscal year. So all of those are now in there per unit. And so you'll have all of that information. It is interesting, just to point out that we did receive the $6 million loan that was supposed to be paid back. So we did get that in the last fiscal year, and we are scheduled to get the $9 million in the future year. So we'll see if that comes through, and I'll keep the members advised of that information. As you will hear during the legislative report, the governor attached a signing message to the board's sunset review bill, which states the governor's office staff will be setting up meetings on two issues, both vertical enforcement, and I think we might have a volunteer to help Deb on that, and the expert reviewer report. Board staff will be attending these meetings and representing the board's position on the vertical enforcement program based upon the previous vote of the board. And again, I think that that's something that it'll be important to have both Dr. Ghana Davin, if you want to pick another board member to attend, that will be really valuable for us. In my report, I provided a brief update on the issue of the overprescribing psychotropic medication to foster care children, and we are actually pleased to announce that we were able to receive some releases to look into the issue for 4 children so far. Our next issue will be actually finding out how to move through the court process to obtain authorization to investigate the care and treatment provided to these children. So it's been a long, arduous process, but we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel now with getting the authority to look at these medical records. So we're really glad that it actually is working. As all of you know, I'm Virginia Harold, Executive Officer of the Board of Pharmacy, and I work very closely on issues that pertain to both of our boards. And last week, a joint training was provided by Dr. Fishman on appropriate opioid prescribing that was provided to the Board of Pharmacy staff, specifically their enforcement inspectors, and our board staff, as well as staff from the Health Quality Investigation Unit and other healing arts boards. The training was hosted by the Board of Pharmacy, and it was actually nice to see all of us together working together on this issue and being able to ask questions on how to investigate those cases of overprescribing. We will continue to find areas where we can work together on these issues. In addition, last week I attended via teleconference and webinar the annual meeting of the State Board Advisory Panel to the USMLE. This council is made up of 10 state board representatives who provide feedback and input on the USMLE. The council heard about recent updates to the exam and reviewed a list of stakeholder issues. The members also discussed topics including in the examination and reviewed the USMLE annual report, which I'll be sending to members probably next week. I would strongly encourage any of our physician members that may be interested in assisting with the USMLE to let me know so I can provide that information to the National Board of Medical Examiners and the FSMB. They really look for that input, and it's really actually a valuable process to go through. And so if anybody's interested, please let me know. I think they do a great job of setting up that exam, and they couldn't do it without the physicians around the country. I also attended via teleconference and webinar the Federation Advisory Council in August. This council is made up of 9 executive directors across the United States who provide input to the FSMB on issues and trends within each of the boards. These meetings help the board remain aware of the national issues that are of importance and provide input from the California perspective. And I actually just like to thank the Federation because we haven't been able to travel to those meetings because our out-of-state trips have been denied. But the good thing is they're opening it up now to allow us to do webinar. Now it's not as valuable, I don't think, as being face-to-face, and it is sometimes difficult on the teleconference, but at least we're still able to participate and provide input from the California perspective. As some of you may remember, at the last meeting in October of last year, October 2016, I provided information about a pilot program that was established by Business and Professions Code 853 entitled the Licensed Physicians and Dentists from Mexico Pilot Program. This law authorizes 30 physicians licensed in Mexico specializing in family practice, internal medicine, pediatrics, and OB-GYN to practice in California for 3 years. The board has to issue a 3-year license to these individuals to practice in a nonprofit community health center. It actually appears that the funding for this program may be received within the next month. In addition, it appears the program may complete its orientation and curriculum and provide it to the board for review. So the law requires that we actually review that curriculum and approve it, and we'll have to have a medical consultant relook at it first and then send it to the board. If the board's medical consultant completes his review prior to the January board meeting, there may be a need for an interim meeting, and that's why I'm kind of bringing it to your attention. We will reach out to members and try to find dates that we can get a quorum for this issue. The meeting would be able to be done via teleconference, and I'll be providing more information as that comes forward. Board staff have actually been meeting with Governor's Office staff, the Department of Finance, the Department of Consumer Affairs, and Business Consumer Services Housing Agency on this issue, as well as legislative staff. So again, more information will be forthcoming once we get the funding, because again, we can't do anything until we get the funding to actually have that information be able to even go to a medical consultant. I would also like to let the members know that the Department of Consumer Affairs released its new license lookup system a few weeks ago. And so I really encourage any of you that's used to the old lookup system, please go on our website and go and do a search. It's very different than what it was before. First of all, the first thing you'll notice is that was to where before you used to have to wait for quite a while for the name search to pop up. It actually works very quickly now. It comes back within seconds. And then also there's numerous filters. So now an individual can actually go into that screen and they can start choosing what they're looking for that physician, counties that they're located in. If they've had action, it's actually a really good tool, not only for the public, but we get a lot of requests for information. And this is actually going to be able to have individuals actually use the system rather than have our staff have to pull the information. So that's another thing that's out there as well. Now we are, and actually it's with the Department of Consumer Affairs, they're actually taking input on the system, and our staff reached out to some of our stakeholders to obtain their feedback on the new system, and any improvements can be made. So we're really looking to receive feedback on that system still, and I think that we'll be able to get more improvements in because it's actually built by Department of Consumer Affairs staff. It'll be easier to put those changes in. One other item that I want to make members aware of is the possible need to relocate our offices in Sacramento. We are currently in the soft term of a lease agreement and several negotiations are occurring. We've been working with the Department of General Services and the Department of Consumer Affairs staff on this issue. Movies is expensive and it's also very disruptive to staff, so we are hopeful that it will not be necessary. However, depending on the negotiations, it may need to occur. I will keep the board informed as more information is available. It's still early in the process, but I do want to make you aware of it because the impact of moving is quite extensive. Ms. Pines and I have talked about it, and I will do everything we can while keeping our staff safety in mind to stay at the location that we are. But if we do move, it will be a significant hit to the budget. And again, downtime during the time of moving is significant. You have to pack up, you have the time to move, and then unpack. So we'll be working on all of that. Yes.
To where the move would be?
No, we don't have a location located yet. So how it happens with the Department of General Services, once we actually identify that we can't stay where we are, they go out for a site visit, a site search, and then individuals come back, and then we have to see what kind of build out we would have to do at that location. So it's not anything that's going to happen, but it's something that we have to plan for. May not happen. It's just real dependent on a lot of circumstances that are going on. And we'll keep I actually have a all staff meeting in November with all the staff too. So we'll be notifying them and kind of going through discussions with them as we move through the process as well. And then finally, as you all know, the Federation is seeking individuals who are interested in serving on committees with the Federation. And I've actually only heard from Dr. Kraus at this time, who would like to be nominated to the Ethics and Professionalism Committee and any committee where his expertise could be used. So if no one else would like to be nominated, then at this time, I'd actually like to ask for a motion to approve the preparation of a letter for recommendation and support for appointment of Dr. Kraus to that committee.
So moved.
Have a second. Okay. Any comments from the board members? Comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
There is a comment from the phone from Eric. Your line is open.
Kim, I wonder if there's any correlation between the boards coming up with more disciplines now that we're monitoring the board's every move and mirroring all the disciplines and problems on our patient safety website at bit.ly.com/DocCaught. Now that the Breeze search interface is almost worse with the new changes, it's a good thing citizens have our new website to look up bad doctors. The font on the new website is often extremely tiny, and you still can't look up, say, all the doctors in California who are sex offenders, something Carrie Webb wanted to charge me over $1,000 for. We work in Breeze hundreds of times every day, and no one contacted us for our input. You brag about everyone working together, but there seems to be a roadblock with working with me. I guess I can't be a part of everyone. Also, I sent some letters to you in care of the hotel. Please make sure that each of the board members gets their copy. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
No comments from the phone.
Okay, Ms. Cruz, roll call, please. Roll call. This is for the motion to recommend Dr. Kraus.
Dr. Bolat? Judge Feinstein?
Yes.
Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Dr. Kraus?
Aye.
Ms. Lawson?
Yes.
Dr. Levine?
Yes.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Pines?
Yes.
Ms. Sutton-Wills?
Yes.
Dr. Warmoth?
Yes.
And Dr. Gonadev?
Aye. Motion carries. Mr. Warmoth was cringing when you said doctor, but so- okay, Kim, can you conclude the report?
Yeah, so this concludes my report unless there are any questions.
I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
I heard the word webinar a lot, and my feelings and others about that. I know you love flying, but it's really a shame that we missed the face-to-face. I would have actually wanted to be on the Education Committee, which I've been on twice, but because of the financial hit that I have taken, I couldn't chance it. But it's a shame because I really enjoyed that interaction with FSMB. So the number of complaints has gone up, and as you move into an age of more technology, it may be easier for people to submit their complaints online. So you probably will see that progression because we're going to improve our ability for consumers to complain electronically. Would you?
I would completely agree. We've definitely seen ever since we went with an online complaint form an increase in complaints.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, you've seen that, resulting in what you just reported. Thank you.
Any other comments? Any comments from the audience?
Good afternoon, Julie D'Angelo, Falmouth from the Center for Public Interest Law. I have looked at the new Breeze website thing, and I have to agree with Mr. Andrus that the once you get into a physician's profile, the font size is incredibly tiny. It may be a factor of my decreasing vision as I age. It may also be my particular computer, but it's almost unreadable. And so if it's easy to fix, font size is definitely something you should address. Thank you.
We can take that back.
Thank you, Julie. Next one is Marian Hollingsford.
Good afternoon. My name is Marian Hollingsworth, and I am representing myself on this matter. In the list of activities and events accomplished by the Medical Board of California under the administrative updates, there was one that said board staff met with CMA, the California Medical Association, on issues of interest to both parties. However, these issues of interest were not disclosed. This raises some red flags for a number of reasons, particularly since this meeting could be viewed as a conflict of interest. For one, the CMA's sole purpose is to protect the practice and financial interests of its members, some 43,000 doctors, which is only about a third of the doctors in California. On the other hand, the medical board is entrusted to protect the state's 39 million residents from bad doctors. Now, the CMA has been able to successfully block just about every patient safety-oriented piece of legislation that has been presented for the past few years. Most recently, the probation notification issue in both SB 1033 and the Sunset Review Bill 798. What is concerning that there are members on this board who have more than a basic membership with the CMA. Dr. Gnanadev is a former CMA president, has given $50,000 to the CMA for an annual reward to the doctor who recruits the most members, and he sits on the board of the CMA Foundation. Not only that, but the CEO of the CMA, Dustin Corcoran, sits on the board of Dr. Gnanadev's new medical school. Dr. Krause has been a trustee with the CMA since 2010, according to his LinkedIn, and both he and Dr. Gnanadev made generous contributions to the CMA's Political Action Committee in 2016. Now, it has become obvious that the CMA is routinely mentioned at medical board meetings, usually whenever bills are being reviewed. Instead of giving their own opinions, board members will often ask first what the CMA thinks. Now, this gives the impression and the appearance that the CMA has a significant influence on this board. So when getting back to this meeting, you have to wonder,
Please conclude.
okay, why was the agency that's supposed to protect the people of California meeting with a lobbying group that only wants to protect doctors? So in the spirit of transparency, I ask you to reveal what this meeting was about. It would help to know where you stand. And also, I second the issue about the font being too small on the new Breeze. So if you could answer that question on the meeting, I would appreciate that.
Thank you.
I have to think back. We met on the physician health and wellness program discussion. We met on changes that need to be done to radiologic health. And do you remember, Miss?
How they approve CME dealing with radiologic health. It's through CDPH. So it was a
technical meeting on that. And typically we go over things on the agenda coming up for upcoming meetings. And the invitation to meet with consumer groups is always extended. And we've met with Consumer Union Safe Patient Project individuals upon request, and that's always available.
And I would like to say the request does come from CMA to ask us to meet with them.
Any other comments from the audience?
May I speak?
Yes.
I'd like to acknowledge the concern about the optics and the perception. And I encourage members of the public to speak and request information. Certainly, I think it troubles each of us personally in terms of whether or not we may have conflicts of interest or whether or not we may be perceived to have conflicts of interest. Although I am still a member of the CMA, my trusteeship concluded in 2016. I'm not an officer of the CMA or any body of it, but I also want the public to have some understanding that the CMA is more than just a physician advocacy organization. Personally, I've been active in medical associations for many years, and my own personal point of advocacy has still been in patient protection and improved healthcare. The world is not black and white, and I want the public to continue to challenge us and raise these issues, but I also think that board members are deserving of some trust. And I know deep in my heart that my heart and mind has always been for patient protection, whether it be in my office, at a CMA meeting, or serving the Medical Board of California. And I'd like to be trusted in that regard.
Thank you, Dr. Cross. And I intentionally didn't go into details about the accusations which come. When you're a leader in medicine, you do wear a lot of hats. You're very careful what you do. Just for your sake, I'll give you, my entire life was spent at a county hospital, taking care of poor people. So just don't go there calling all kind of conflicts. If you're a leader, I was CMA member. 10 years ago, I was CMA president. I am member of the foundation. Foundation's job is actually, foundation changed its name to Physicians for Healthy California. So the mission of the foundation is to improve the health in California. I'm an AMPAC board member. I actually read the entire 2,000-page health reform bill because I was president of CMA at that time. I worked in Congressman Waxman's office and Speaker Pelosi's office at length. So these things, you don't get to be a leader unless you're involved. That doesn't mean that you're going to show conflicts everywhere. So I understand public's concern. I accept the public concern. I do my best to stay away. When I wear that appropriate hat, I will actually do what's right for that. As the president of this board, my only job is to consumer protection, which is the mission of the Medical Board of California. With that, I think I didn't want to go into that, but as Dr. Krause said, I thought it was time to really just let people know. Any comments from the audience? Others? Any comments on the phone?
We do have a comment from the phone. Eric, your line is open.
Dr. Cross, how can we trust board members when we see you regularly giving licenses back to doctors who in any other profession, teachers, police, any other profession, would have their license revoked? Doctors who sexually molest patients are often getting their licenses back. Ask Dev Gananadev about that. Dev, you work at a county hospital that has been under federal investigation, and your partner in your new medical school, Prim Reddy, is currently under federal investigation. How exactly are we supposed to trust people like you on our medical board? And back to the complaints being easier to file online, Sure, there are more complaints, but the disciplines are not going up proportionately. They are always only in the hundreds. So think about that. If there's more complaints, why aren't there thousands of disciplines, not just hundreds? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andres. You have a right to speak. Okay, any other comments on the phone?
No comments from the phone at this time.
Then at this time, I'd actually also like to ask Dr. Kraus to provide an update on his Federation work group on the stem cell therapy that he attended.
Thank you, Kim. Ms. Kirschmeyer and I attended the Federation of State Medical Boards meeting in April in Fort Worth, Texas. This was the third time attending the FSMB meeting, and I found it to be very helpful. We're lucky to live in a nation that has 50 plus individual experiments going on in each state as to the best way to do things. And I'm a firm believer in paying attention to what happens in other states, and the FSMB is a perfect platform for us to learn from one another. As you know, stem cell clinics are cropping up all over town. It's hard to go through a day without hearing an ad on the radio, on the internet, on TV, in the newspaper for stem cell and regenerative therapies. And this has become of increasing concern nationally as well as locally. You may be aware of an article that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine earlier this year that described 3 people who were totally blinded after receiving what were called stem cell treatments at a clinic in Florida for macular degeneration. So the FSMB decided at the April meeting to convene a work group to study stem cell and regenerative therapy, and I was fortunate to have been selected to serve on that committee. This committee has 12 members. The chair is a osteopathic physician from Arizona. There are 7 other state board members, 4 of whom are physicians, 3 of whom are non-physicians, from the states of Rhode Island, Minnesota, Alabama, Illinois, and California. And there are also 5 experts serving on the committee in science, law, and bioethics, 2 of whom are physicians, 2 are attorneys, and 1 is a patient who himself has been a beneficiary of stem cell treatments and is an advocate for stem cell treatments, in addition to 3 ex officio members who are officers of the FSMB and 2 staff members. One of the difficulties in facing the challenge of assessing and regulating stem cell and regenerative therapies is there's no doubt that major advances and breakthroughs have already been made and are increasingly available in bona fide treatments. But there is a concern in terms of how to know how to sort the wheat from the chaff and how to protect the public. So the charge of this work group was fourfold. One is to evaluate the prevalence, promotional practices, and incidences of patient harm related to regenerative medicine and adult stem cell therapies in the United States. The second is to evaluate current regulatory approaches that are designed to protect the public, recognizing potential for improved patient outcomes through health innovation and technology. The third is to identify best practices for state medical and osteopathic boards in investigating complaints of patient harm, fraud, and the compliance with licensure requirements. And the fourth is to issue a report on the work group's research findings and recommend best regulatory practices and guidelines related to physicians' use of regenerative medicine and adult stem cell therapies in a manner consistent with safe and responsible medicine. So the first meeting of the work group was convened on September 7th in Washington, D.C. I participated by teleconference from California, and many topics were reviewed, and there was a notation about some of the top concerns regarding stem cell interventions, which I'll summarize in a moment, but there is not yet a report. And there will be a draft report that will be made available to committee members for review and comment in November or December. And in December, there will be a teleconference of the work group again in the preparation of a report that will then be considered at the next FSMB meeting in April. So I want you to know that these concerns are ongoing and being investigated. One observation was of the shifting marketplace, so to speak, where there is increasing marketing of unproven stem cell interventions directly to patients, largely through the internet. Concerns that claims of efficacy are largely based on patient testimonials, with many clinics claiming benefits and understating risks. Concerns regarding patient perceptions. There have only been 6 studies noted which examined the views of patients, all of which use qualitative methods. The patients perceive themselves as active participants, not passive players, who engage the medical system, conduct research, and visit sites. All of the patients have an optimistic view of clinics and providers, and many claim a feeling of hopelessness, which has been given them by the medical community, and therefore have been easily attracted to stem cell clinics. There also is a movement in this nation of right to try, and 37 states have right to try laws. There is a new federal right to try law, and under the right to try, where all other avenues of sound treatment may have been exhausted, these are groups of patients who seek other potential therapies, including drugs and therapies that may still be in FDA trials but not yet approved by the FDA. You may have read recently that the FDA itself has announced that they have authority over stem cell and regenerative therapies if and when cells are removed from the body, processed, and then reapplied to the body. But to my knowledge, the FDA has not yet begun to assert that authority in a standard manner. There is concern about whether or not we have the capacity to simply control the plethora of unproven treatments by regulatory processes, because here already we are one of the most highly regulated nations in the world, and we are also the site of a burgeoning stem cell and regenerative therapy business. We don't know how best to educate the public, and that's being explored. There have been a number of civil lawsuits where patients have accused providers of fraud, false advertising, misrepresentation, lack of informed consent, unfair business practices, financial abuse, elder abuse, infliction of emotional distress, and it is yet unclear what the impact of these civil litigation strategies may be. But lawsuits certainly are one way that patients may seek recourse for damages, and it could alter business practices. We're still studying the role of scientific and medical societies and want medical societies to be more involved in educating the public and offering their opinions and guidance for stem cell and regenerative therapy. The FSMB itself will seek to engage patient advocacy groups. And there was the greatest recognition that although we may leap to prevent unproven therapies, that in fact we're still at a stage where we all need to be doing more research and to help patients themselves separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. So more will come. I look forward to a draft report. I look forward to the FSMB issuing a report, and you should remain cognizant that the FSMB is an advisory organization. It's not an organization that carries any regulatory authority. So once there is an FSMB report, then that will come back to our board for consideration, and hopefully it will assist us in our own process of requesting some relief and protection for patients of California for unfounded claims made for stem cell and regenerative therapies. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Krause. Dr. Hawkins.
I just wanted to advise those here that I'm a member of one of the FDA advisory committees, Cellular, Tissue, and Gene Therapy Advisory Committees. And earlier this month, we met to hear about a new gene therapy, perhaps a second gene therapy available to treat a inherited condition resulting in blindness, all those afflicted with it. This is probably the second gene therapy that's been come before the FDA. The advisory committee, which I'm a consumer representative, only makes recommendations. So after hearing the presentation from the several years of research and the FDA's assessment of this research and outcome, we recommended unanimously that this gene therapy be approved by the FDA. In the beginning of this year, next year we'll hear whether the FDA in fact approves this new gene therapy with which can prevent or reduce the slow progression of blindness in all individuals previously associated with who would become totally blind.
Thank you, Dr. Hawkins. No doubt in my mind, I'm a technology freak. One day we'll get there. Genomics, proteomics, immunotherapeutics, bioinformatics is the future of medicine. But in the meantime, there are a lot of charlatans get into field, and that's what Dr. Krause was talking about. And it's FDA, the medical boards, and the state and federal government's job to make sure that people are not hurt by these false advertisement and false cures. So, any other comments? Any comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
There are no comments from the phone.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll go to item number 7, update on the disciplinary demographic task force, Dr. Cross and Ms. Wright. Dr. Cross.
I apologize that you need to hear my continuing droning voice.
True, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Gnanadev. As the members know, the goal of our task force has been to evaluate claims of discrimination and the findings of the California Research Bureau demographic study in order to proactively prevent bias in any and all processes of the board and in actions of anyone who may be involved in the investigative or disciplinary processes. Since our last board meeting, the board not only finalized its contract with the vendor to provide the implicit bias training, but held training sessions in both Northern and Southern California. Staff from the board, the Health Quality Investigation Unit, the Attorney General's Office, and board members all were invited to attend this training. There was a great turnout, and most individuals required to attend the training attended these in-person sessions. Any staff or members who did not attend the in-person training will be required to take the webinar when it is completed. The board is in the last steps to complete the webinar. The training provided specific information on the board's enforcement process, as well as information on subconscious bias. The training also walked the attendees through case studies to identify areas where implicit bias may be a potential. The board received good feedback on the training. However, as previously stated, we would recommend that this training be repeated every 2 years. It will be recommended that the training next time be longer and provide for more information sharing, as this was one recommendation from those in attendance. As stated at the last meeting, the task force identified certain information that should be removed from the complaint, investigation, and prosecution process. This information included any information identifying the medical school the licensee attended or the location of postgraduate training that was received. On September 25th, 2017, the board's executive director sent a memo to the Health Quality Investigative Unit and Attorney General's Office regarding this policy change. The change was implemented by the board staff and also staff from each of these entities. In addition, Ms. Kirkmeyer spoke with the presiding judge at the Office of Administrative Hearings earlier this month and will be providing a written request to them requesting that this information not be included in the proposed decisions. The board staff continues to review its processes to determine if there are other areas where the board can make changes to ensure that implicit bias is not a part of the enforcement process. We want to thank our stakeholders for bringing this matter to the board's attention and for all their assistance with this issue. Are there any questions?
I'll recognize just 1 minute. I just want to get the board first. Any comments or questions for Dr. Cross?
I have a comment.
Yeah, Judge Feinstein.
Thank you.
Dr. Kraus, whereas I certainly understand the issue of implicit bias and our need to, really to take whatever steps we need to eliminate it and recognize it. When you recognize it, you tend to eliminate it. I can say, just as a trial lawyer and as a trial judge, the background of a witness is very relevant to how they are perceived by a trier of fact. And although, perhaps you don't, maybe it's, well, it's not usually gender, but somebody's experience, whether they've done fellowships, whether they've completed levels of training, is germane when we are assessing complaints to some degree. I mean, it doesn't carry that much weight, but it does make a difference. And I think it's particularly true with our expert witnesses who review things. So I'm a little concerned that things not get too sanitized, so that when we weigh the facts of a case, that we're not automatically eliminating certain, perhaps material and relevant facts.
May I respond?
Go ahead.
In my opinion, you're quite right. But we know that the individual has a MD or DO degree from a accredited institution. The completion of residency training and fellowship training is not masked, but the institutions where these educational processes are performed are masked. And there has been some concern that even some of our reviewers may have a bias if they see an applicant with a Harvard Medical School MD versus an applicant from an international school MD. And that's the type of bias that we seek to remove. Kim?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say this. We actually had a discussion on Tuesday with actually Ms. Castro and her team, as well as Ms. Nichols and her team, about this same issue, because we're hearing from the DEGs what's important to them and what we can and can't redact. And so in order for them to be able to try the case. And so what we have decided, just like Dr. House said, is that where they went is going to be taken out. But you will still be able to identify, and they'll be able to identify what training they've had. It's just that it won't identify where that training was received. Now, for the medical experts, obviously that's not going to be redacted because that's going to be in their CV that's presented to the judge. And so it's not the redaction of the expert, it's the redaction of the respondent physician's information that's going to be redacted. So experts will be different. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
That makes sense. I'm
Thank
not
you.
sure I agree with it, but I understand.
Oh, we totally understand your feelings because the same way we looked at it, but I think we went to as far as we could to take out any potential. I want to make sure that word is right, implicit bias. It's a potential. And actually the 2 hours plus training I sat through in Los Angeles was fairly good. Number one was that I was able to meet all our investigative staff who work at LA office. It was a lot of fun. Only bad thing was it normally takes 1 hour to drive back. It took 3 hours to come back home in the rush hour. So, but it was very good. I think it's especially everybody going through, and we could see just listening to people participating that yes, there are some biases involved. So it was very good training. So any other comments from the board? Then I'll go to audience. Audience comments? Yes, ma'am.
Hi. I was wondering if...
Please sit down.
Can you hear me? Oh,
Please sit down. Pull the mic towards you.
A quick question. The California Research Demographic Study. Can I have the raw data of that study? Is it available to the public? I really would like to have that.
It is not available. It's confidential, and that was the understanding in the agreement.
Like
Where
the
the-
numbers, I'm just asking for the numbers and the demographics, not anyone's name or anything like that.
Maybe we can talk further so we can understand more about what you're looking for.
Okay.
Yeah, why don't you connect with Ms. Webb so that you can really see what is needed? Any other comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
We do have comments from the phone. Anne, your line is open.
This is Ann Stavrin, President of the Charles R. Drew Medical Society. I had a question. Were there any tools that measured unconscious bias or implicit bias prior to the training? And is there any thought to how that you're going to measure to see that there's been improvement?
No, it was a training. Afterwards, we got to see, I think, the people who, at least I can tell you the training I was at, people were made aware of the non-conscious. Unconscious is a bad word for me because if you're unconscious means you're out. So it's just a medical term. But yes, I think we need to do further studies afterwards. It might take a long time to compile the data and see if this training made a difference. Remember that everyone is going through the training, all the people who work for medical board, including its board. So we will, but you might not see the results for 5 years or so. Otherwise, you won't get really scientific value. Remember when we did with 2 or 3 year data, actually it came out as there was not even any possibility of bias. Only when we looked at 10 years data, there was something it's worth looking at. So that's why. Dr. Cross.
With the indulgence of the board, I'd like to invite the caller to work with us in terms of developing ongoing mechanisms of testing for bias. I've stated for the record before that you don't get past prejudice and bias by doing one study and saying it doesn't exist. It has to be an ongoing concern. And we need to have a open avenue for all stakeholders to work with us to measure the results of what we're doing. So I think we should encourage that.
Yeah, Dr. Cross, your committee is still there, exists. So you can do as part of the committee. You and Ms. Wright can do. You don't need a board's permission. What else? Dr. Levine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have another comment from Khadija. Your line is open.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. This is Dr. Khadija Lang, Golden State Medical Association President. I sort of piggyback Dr. Kraus and Ms. Kirschmeyer sort of already touched on what I was going to say in response to the concern of the judge that even though information is important for people to make a decision, they did clearly indicate that they were only removing the names of the institutions where people who were the accused had done their studies because of the fact that we found that there's not only bias exhibited and thought about towards foreign schools, there's been incidences where people have openly made statements about bias against certain schools if they are not one of the top 10 medical schools in the country or medical facilities. And people get a great training at many of the county facilities in this country, which are not listed in the top 10 or top anything of hospitals or programs, but it doesn't limit the quality of training and education that a physician receives. And so a part of the concern is that while you have a valid concern and reason to want to know where your expert witnesses trained and what their basis and background is, for the physician being accused, especially because many minority physicians have not been able to afford to or be accepted into, often because of bias. They haven't necessarily been able to have the opportunity to go to top universities or top medical schools and residency programs. It puts them at an unfair advantage when accusations are made if investigators are assuming from the beginning that, oh, this person is not from a top school or a top residency, so let's really try to push this further. And this is where...
Please conclude.
I'm sorry?
Please conclude.
Okay, and this is where the benefit comes in from didacting that information so all physicians can have a fair look at by the investigators and the board, and we support continuing that.
Thank you. Any other comments on the phone?
No other comments at this time.
Dr. Levine?
Yeah, and I wanted to tag on to the president of the Golden State Medical Society's, I forget her last name, Ann, comment. I'm sorry? Thank you. Training is not a guarantee of mitigation of a problem, and I would only point to the mandatory sexual harassment training that millions of Californians take every year, and I think there's really good evidence that it has not solved the problem of sexual harassment in California. And so I think that an effort to understand the impact of the training and to track the consequences of both our intervention in terms of training as well as the change in the presentation of information in the materials will be an important thing. We're not going to, as you said, it's going to take a while for this to wash through the system, but I think these are important steps to understand and evaluate whether the training itself is actually doing anything.
Thank you. Then we'll go to the next item, agenda item 8, update on physician assistant board. Ms. Kirschmeyer.
So I'm giving this report actually because we no longer have a board member on the physician assistant board. Since Dr. Bishop left our board, he's no longer on there. And I know that they will hopefully be appointing another member to the board from our board, but until they do, I'll give the updates. And I really received it from the PA board. The Physician Assistant Board conducted its quarterly meeting on August 11, 2017 in San Diego during the California Academy of Physician Assistants annual conference. The last quarterly meeting will be held on October 30th in Sacramento. The board members discussed that the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania decided that informed consent can only be given by the physician in the state of Pennsylvania, and DCA Legal Counsel stated that the decision by the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania had no effect on the PA Board's interpretation of California law. Ms. Forsyth reported that the PAB, or the board's budget, reflected a positive 4.2% at the end of month 12. She reported investigative costs performed by the medical board totaled $144,000. It was reported that these costs are rising due to both the number of complaints filed and the complexity of the complaints. Gail Curtis, president and chair of the board of directors of the American Academy of Physician Assistants, presented to the board discussing where the PA profession is now, what the academy envisions for the future, how the practice environment in California compares to other states, and how the academy's new policies aim to ensure that the PA profession will continue to thrive amongst the various advancements and changes in the way that healthcare is being delivered. She stated that the goal of the Academy is to ensure that state laws and regulations allow for optimal PA utilization. The Academy's new policy also seeks to change laws and regulations that would emphasize PA's commitment to team practice with the degree of collaboration determined at the practice level that would eliminate legal requirements for a PA to have a specific relationship with a physician in order to practice. It would authorize PAs to be directly reimbursed by all public and private insurers and would create autonomous majority PA boards to regulate PA practice or give that authority to healing arts and medical boards with PA as members. The adoption of the new policy in May of 2017 resulted in questions, one of which was whether the new policy will allow an inexperienced PA to practice independently. The Academy responded that the guidelines describe a system that requires PAs to practice within the limits of their education, experience, and standard of care, and to collaborate, consult with, and refer to physicians and others as required. California does not meet the Academy's recommended policy that PAs be responsible for the care they provide, as California regulations state that supervising physicians are responsible for all medical services provided by a PA, nor does California law authorize direct reimbursement for PAs. And so this is going to be an issue that it sounds like they're going to be looking at, possibly legislation. I'm not sure what they'll be looking at in the future, but that was what was discussed at that meeting. The PA board also discussed regulations at their meeting, including citations for unlicensed businesses and failure to respond to the board's continuing medical education audit letter. The National Commission on Certification for Physician Assistants is currently lobbying various states for legislation to mandate that PAs retain certification through their agency in order to renew their state PA license. Recently, the state of West Virginia vetoed a bill that would have removed the current the commission's certification requirements of completing 100 hours of CME every 2 years and successfully passing that commission's recertification exam every 10 years. The commission believes that this veto protects patient safety and holds PAs to a higher standard. Currently, California law requires PAs to renew their license to be either the commission certified or complete 50 hours of Category 1 CME every 2 years. They followed a lengthy discussion. It was determined that the board will investigate the possibility of working with a new national certifying body thesuch as the American Academy of Physician Assistants. The board also discussed updating the sample delegation of services agreement that is online on their website to reflect the amended laws and regulations. That delegation of service agreement is provided as a sample to PAs to use along with their supervising physician. The board discussed the new legislative bills that affect healthcare profession, and most notably for their board, AB 710, which would mandate one meeting every 2 years be conducted in rural Northern California. Lastly, the PA board would like to thank the medical board staff for their continued support and guidance.
Comments, Dr. Lewis?
Every year or so, we hear about scope of practice issues and encroachment on medical practice. And so I was listening to your comments on that meeting, and could you, in a couple sentences, give me your feeling, if you could, about a push for scope of practice broadening for PAs? Because right now we try to protect that in California, and the regs say that they have to have this relationship, but I'm a little concerned that, you know, you'll see it in other states and it's going to encroach upon California.
So any change in scope of practice would have to be done legislatively. And I can't speak for the board, but I think we would do a good job of analyzing any change in their scope of practice or the removal of the physician supervision. I mean, we've been very careful with other boards when these scope bills come forward. Even, for example, the last one for optometry that changed, we opposed the bill. It still made it through, but we did stand up and say that we didn't think it was good for consumer protection. And I think that we need to carefully analyze every bill that comes through to make sure that we're putting our consumer protection hats on and that we're doing the right thing for the consumers, and looking at if you are going to expand the scope, is there adequate training for those individuals in order to expand that scope, or even should that scope be expanded and should it remain? I know one thing that they did talk about, I kind of cut it out, was just the talking about the programs that they have and how long their training is. And I think that if a scope expansion bill came to us, I don't know that we would probably take a neutral position on it anyway, but I think that we would oppose anything that didn't lengthen their training.
So I just to give you an answer is that right now our sunset bill extended 3 years of residency after medical school to be licensed in California. Keep in mind, and that was the number one reason for us to go that route was consumer protection. So many times people who are trained a lot less amount of time going to not a MD or DO school and then want similar things. Right now we don't look at that as consumer protection, but when it comes to that, we will evaluate very carefully, because we got don't know about Kim, I took a lot of hits on why we are doing this 3 years. And our answer was consumer protection, because somebody can finish 1 year, get fired and won't get second year of residency, and they have a license to practice in medicine. Just didn't make sense. So, Dr. Hawkins and then Dr. Cross.
So I know that many of the PA programs are going through a 3-year training program, and I think they get a master's degree. I've not looked at the curriculum carefully enough to see if what happens in that 3rd year, is that something that's going to lead to increased scope of practice? Does anyone know about that?
So I can't 100% answer your question. I can say what they had here. It says the typical PA program is about 27 continuous months and consists of didactic classroom and clinical phases. Graduating students will have completed 2,000 hours of supervised clinical experiences.
So it's
not sure.
it's basically 1 year of clinical rotations. Medical students go through 2 years of clinical rotations, plus to get licensed, you need 3 years of residency, so that's 5 years in California as of 2020.
Understood. And prior to a couple years ago was 2 years of training for PAs.
Dr. Cross.
I'm sensitive to the word encroachment that I heard. And I'd like to think that we can hold ourselves to be solely concerned about patient safety and serving the public. And one of the things I've enjoyed about our current director is that she continues to reach out to other boards. And I'm hopeful that as time goes on, that we will be nothing but collaborative. And if our opinion of what is necessary for education, training, supervision, and protection of the public can be met by other practitioners, then I don't think we would bar the door in terms of expansion of scope of practice. But on the one hand, as Dr. Gnanadev noted, it would be foolhardy for us to demand more and more and more of our physicians and not have a same level of demand of other practitioners and other licensees who would potentially be providing the same evaluation and management and procedural services that we're holding physicians to such a high level for. I would like to foresee a time when the standard of care amongst all practitioners could be uniform, where if you are licensed and authorized to do a procedure, that you can trust that that procedure will be done at the same level of quality of care as any other licensed practitioner.
Understood. Dr. Hawkins.
Dr. Ballard, do you have any insight into this training?
Dr. Hawkins, I have, my knowledge is more for the nurse practitioner, advanced practice nursing, not PAs.
Okay, Dr. Levine?
Just one comment. The Medical Board of California was founded in 1876, and this increase in requirement of 3 years of postgraduate training is the first change since Flexner. So for almost 100 years, the standard for licensure has not changed. So I think I'm thrilled that this was successfully incorporated into the sunset.
At the opposition of a lot of people. So thank you. And any comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
There are no comments on the phone at this time.
Thank you. Well, actually, that gets this meeting to the close. We'll adjourn till 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Thank you.